Welcome to Silver Creek Church Online, and thank you so much for joining us. On December 4th, we're going to have an amazing celebration as we discuss all of the funds that we were able to raise for our Give, Serve, Love. We'll also be able to hear from some of those who we've helped in the community. Please feel free to join us anytime in person as well. We're here in Bertrand, Michigan, and we would love to see you. Now we're going to join Pastor Matt for today's service.
So all of us enjoy having objects. They bring meaning and joy to our life. Individuals with hoarding disorder are no different from all of us. We have three main reasons that we keep objects. So one is sentimentality, something that reminds you of a happy time or a loved one. The second is the aesthetics. Walking along the beach and seeing a beautiful seashell, you want to take it home and remember the beauty of the day and the object. And the other is the usefulness. So I don't want to throw this away. It could come in handy someday. Now, individuals with hoarding disorder have these same reasons, but they're magnified. So objects may have all three of these reasons, or the feelings may be more intense. And that's really where the attachment comes in and the difficulty parting with objects. Individuals with hoarding disorder are very creative, and they can come up with lots of uses for a particular object. And, we've had clients where something as simple as a toilet paper roll, they could use it for binoculars for a child's science fair project. It could be donated to a local school. An art project could be made out of it. However, one of the differences that distinguishes an artist versus somebody with hoarding disorder is that those ideas are not fulfilled and realized. So when you ask somebody with hoarding disorder, they don't have plans to donate it to a school. They don't have plans to make an object. They may have plans, but they don't actually execute on that.
Within a household, usually somebody is a person who likes to collect a lot of things, and usually there's somebody else in the household who doesn't like to collect a bunch of things, and it creates some very interesting situations in all of our households when it's like that. Because, sometimes it's just because we think we could use this at some point in the future. Like, I could find a use for this someday. I don't want to just get rid of it. I may need this someday. Or maybe if you think about your refrigerator this way, somebody's usually the one who's like, oh, I'm going to save that because I'll eat that later. And then somebody else is like, what is that in the fridge? There's stuff growing on it. Or the other one's like, who threw away the fish sticks? They're like, the fish sticks have been there for a year. They were frozen into one giant block of ice. There's always one of each of us within every household, it seems like. And we have funny things. People have stuff in their cars. Sometimes they're like, okay, how can you find anything inside of your car? And other people will have lots of everything. And you may ask them, why do you have 3 ice scrapers? Well, because this one works good if the ice is a certain way. This one works good if the snow is a certain way. And they have a reason for each thing they have, but they have lots of things perhaps. And most of us are not hoarders. Let's just be honest. Hoarder is the extreme. Nobody wants to ever be called a hoarder per se. But I think all of us know what it's like to have a lot of stuff. It's cool stuff, or at least at one time we thought it was cool stuff when we first got it. And we certainly can always think of the reason why we need it. But we as a society, we do have an issue with collecting a lot of stuff. And because of that, we've invented things. We are the first society to invent walk-in closets because we need more room inside of our closets. We have things called storage units. Because when you run out of room at your house, guess what? You can rent a facility somewhere else to put more stuff. So you don't run out of space, but we've got garages, basements. We even have storage rooms sometimes, rooms that we're just like, we'll just put in that room. Or maybe there's a drawer, and it's that drawer where stuff gets put, you don't really know where else to put everything else that you put inside that drawer. So in this modern world, most of us fit into one of two categories. I call them savers, and the other side is minimalists. Savers or minimalists, and you'll find yourself somewhere in one of those things, or even in the middle perhaps. And hoarding is the extreme for savers, but disposable living, that's the extreme for us minimalists. And I have to admit, I have a little of both inside of me. I can totally get in with the disposable living. Like, I can see the justification. Let's use paper plates so that it's easier, because man, we're working, we're trying to get a lot of things done. So in our house, a lot of times we use paper plates as the what we eat our usual meals on, and it's disposable and it just makes life easier. But I'm also conscious of the environment, so I don't want to create too much garbage, and but I find myself somewhere in the middle trying to figure this out. But did you know there was a time where the word disposable wasn't even a word? I mean, this is something that's been created and made up in our modern society. And disposable lifestyles have actually grown in popularity over the last 50 years. That's when it's really grown the most, with the invention of plastics and other items that have become disposable. But before plastic packaging, before Ziploc bags were invented, people used to keep a lot of stuff because they could use it, like flour sacks. If you talk to some of your grandparents about this, they can explain that at a time, companies would even take flour sacks and maybe even make them certain prints on them, because people were using them for clothing or things afterwards. Because back in the day, you kept everything. If there was a jar, then you cleaned that and kept that jar, because you could keep something preserved inside of that. Like I said, the flour sacks or crates that things would be shipped in, they would keep that because you could use that for something. Because in that time in society, everything had value to it, because it could be used, and you never know when you're not going to have anything at all. But in our modern time, disposable living is the only and first time that people have had this way of thinking in the human race within the last 6,000 years. This is the only time that we've ever lived this way, where we don't keep everything necessarily for a reason. So as you can see, there could be extremes to either someone who has a lot of stuff or someone who tries to get rid of stuff and keep as little as possible. But because we live in this generation, to us, this is normal. This is what life is like. This is like not unusual. This is what it's like. And we like I don't know about you, but I like the year 2022. I'm glad I don't have to go outside to use the bathroom. I'm glad I don't have to dig a hole somewhere if I want to use the bathroom. I'm really glad that we have indoor plumbing. I like that in our modern life. But our modern life has worries too. And if you look, it can become very apparent to you. Because we can worry about possibly needing something someday, that if we don't have it, maybe I should get that because I might need that someday. I might get worried about that. Or I'm worried because I want my kids to be happy. I want my kids to be fulfilled and satisfied. So maybe I should get that because other kids have that. And so I don't want my kid to feel like they're the oddball or they don't have it either. And so we get worried on so many things because it's based on what should I get more of? What stuff should I have? What do we need? And need is a very big part of the whole thing. So we want to find balance between wasteful and a life of ease. None of us want to be called a hoarder, and none of us want to pollute our planet. We want to take care of our planet. We want to find a healthy balance somewhere in the middle. So how do we do that? And I think it has a lot to do with the value that we place on the things that we have and the things that we buy and the things that we keep. It has a huge part. The value we place on things has a huge part in our decision making. And I think to help us get started off by looking at what the Word of God has to say, I think I want to look in Philippians in just a moment. But the Apostle Paul wrote the book of Philippians. And the Apostle Paul was writing this while he was in jail. So just think about this. He was imprisoned, and instead of writing something about, how much the Roman Empire stinks and how much they're not feeding me very good food, he could write about all the issues, the things he wished he had more of. Could somebody bake some cakes and send me some cakes? I'm getting sick and tired of the corn meat. Whatever. No, instead of writing about the things, he's writing to encourage people who aren't in prison. I mean, imagine that. You're in prison, but you're writing to encourage people who aren't in prison. That's what the Apostle Paul was doing, and much of the New Testament was written that way. So Paul is writing this letter to the church in Philippi. And interesting fact, Philippi is the very first church on European soil. First European church, if you think of it that way, as the gospel began to spread. And so he's writing this letter, encouraging them. And here's what he says in verse 19. And my God will meet all your needs. He's thinking about their needs, mind you. And he's got lots of needs himself, but he's like, and my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. Now, most of us have heard this verse in a little different verbiage, like the King James Version. Let's read the King James Version, because I know, especially if you grew up in church, you're going to recognize, but my God shall supply all your need according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. Some of you are out there going, yeah, I've heard that before, amen, you know. And people have even prayed it. I've even done it for my life. But the point here, and the thing that we've really got to look at today to get a balanced perspective, is that four-letter word, need. Because what we need is defined by each of us individually. The world can try to tell us what we need. They've got lots of commercials for that. They've got lots of infomercials and lots of people who can tell you, this is what you need. But it's up to me, it's up to you to decide, what do I need? What does my family need? And that's important, because Paul's not saying he's going to supply all you want. Paul's not saying he's going to supply all you could ever dream of. He's saying all your need, according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. So today's message really is about unpacking the definition of that word need. If you've got kids, you've heard it said, Mom, I need a new backpack. Or Mom, I need a dance. There's this thing coming up. I got to have a dress for this dance that's coming up. Or Mom, I need some new shoes. Or Dad, I need this. And if you're like most of us, what do we say back? You don't need that. And that's the response typically to give back to someone who's going to say, I've got needs. Someone will respond back, well, you don't really need that, because that's what you're doing. You're challenging that person's idea of what I need and make them think about it a little bit. I think all of us could use that once in a while. But the value we place on things determines what we need. Some of you may say, well, man, Pastor Matt's talking from that table up there. That would really work good for, and you can think of a place or a thing that, I need one of those. Or if you're like me, how many of you have seen on Facebook, somebody puts on there what they just got, and I'm like, oh, I think I could use one of those. And it's easy to compare it and think, by what other people have, I might need it too. Now, in my lifetime, there's one moment that I've got to talk about where I was faced, the most difficult time of my life, I was faced with having to put a value on everything I owned and really decide, what do I need? And it was the moment when my wife and I decided, at the age of 26 she was 24, decided we're going to move our family with two young kids, both under the age of 2.5 years old. We're going to move our family to the other side of an ocean to become missionaries. And at that moment, we had just I built it from the ground up, a home on 26 acres of land, had a little barn with it, had a nice, huge finished basement, and it was full of stuff. It was full of stuff. And we decided to do this. And before you could even go on the trip, well, you've got to liquidate all the stuff you have. And we found out quickly that to ship stuff overseas is very expensive. It comes out to roughly, I put it down here what it was, $50 a square foot. If you're going to ship something in a shipping container to the other side of the ocean. And suddenly, is this worth $50? Takes on a new perspective on that pair of shoes. Is it worth $50 to take these shoes with us on this trip? Or as we opened the drawer, I still remember opening drawers and looking at the entire contents and realizing none of this is worth that much to take, and throwing an entire drawer away. That at one time I filled that drawer because I thought I needed that stuff. And in the basement, we're going through stuff, bags, and we had moved it from house to house a couple of times only to realize we haven't touched this in years. We thought we'd need it someday, but I don't really need this at all. And we ended up whittling our entire house down to 10 suitcases. that would go with us on this trip. We moved our family to the other side of an ocean. And I'll never forget that moment that we went into the airport with these 10 suitcases and 2 kids. One of us each had one on an arm. And this was our life. This was what was most valuable to us. This is what we would take as we moved out of the country. Now we did build like a homemade crate, and I put it in my brother's arm with some special mementos, family pictures of things that you can't, those are special and you can't replace, can't put a value on, that we didn't want to take, but yet we did want to keep. So sure, we did create like a little storage thing to keep some things, but for the most part, what we would take with us to live life on a daily basis, we had in 10 suitcases. We either gave stuff away or we sold it. Most of it we probably gave away, to be honest. But that was, in the moment, it seemed stressful to us to try to fit, it was such a stressful time. It was weeks we went through trying to get this because it's got to get done. And what do I do with this? Or, back and forth. Well, I don't know. What do you think? And trying to figure it out. But it at the end of it all, and especially now, as it's been nearly 20 years later, I'm looking back on that and I'm realizing how much that's impacted the way I value things now even. That moment affected the way that I think about things now. And I look at it now as a gift. If there was a gift I could give to you, I would want you to be able to experience what it's like to take your entire life contents down into 10 suitcases to find out what is really most valuable of all. And this is a situation some of you may have faced before. Maybe you've had the death of a loved one and it forced you to go through their things. And as you go through their things, you're finding, what is this worth? Or what is this worth? And their entire life and the worth of it all changes in a whole new perspective to your eyes, because now you're going through it all and actually putting a value on each and everything. Or maybe you've had a time where you've had a house burned down. And people I talk to people after they've had homes burned down, and every Christian, I'll point out the fact Christian, every Christian that I spoke to after they've had a house burned down, they all said the same thing. After a month or so, they would say, you know what? It was actually a good thing. Because no one was hurt. Obviously, if there's no one hurt, but their things that burned up in that house, they realized that's not what's most important to me. What's most important to me is the fact that my kids and we're okay. What's most important to us is that we're going to be all right. We're going to start over afresh. And it was a new start for them in many ways. But we can get pulled down and weighed down by the things we feel like we need to keep in our life sometimes. Now, it was scary for us to either give away, sell, or try to whittle our life down. So I don't want to undervalue that moment that we went through. It wasn't an easy thing. It was hard. But we had made a decision that we were going to follow out. We were going to blindly show faith towards God because we thought we're going to be missionaries, so we're going to trust that somehow when we move our family over there, everything's going to be okay, that we'll have a place to live, because we didn't know for sure where we'd go and live. We didn't know where we'd get things we needed to cook with, because we didn't take fry pans or anything like that, because there's just no room. It's not worth it. But you know what? God worked it out with us, and we had everything we needed. All of our needs were met. We never missed a meal. We were taken care of every day we were there. And I wonder how it feels for you. Hearing me tell this story, I would love to, if I could look inside your minds and see what's going through your minds right now. Because are you thinking to yourself, oh, that sounds kind of refreshing? Or are you thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could ever do that. That sounds ridiculously crazy. How could you do that? Or the thought of your house burning down. Like you come home from work one day and no one was in the house, but you come home and it's burned to the ground. And of course, like I said, the special mementos, you can never replace pictures of things, and that'd be heartbreaking to lose that. But the other stuff, does it terrify you, the fact of not having stuff and starting over? Because sure, the insurance company would, as long as you have insurance, the insurance company would give you a check and you'd be able to buy back a lot of things that you needed and so on. But for a period of time, your life would be very minimal. And insurance companies are not fast on giving, I can tell you, they're not fast on giving those checks to help cover things. So everyone who goes through a house fire spends a period of time living very minimally, sometimes in hotel rooms. And what would you think if I told you that situation could actually be the best thing that could ever happen to you. You might be looking at me like I'm crazy right now, but hang with me. Because like a colon cleanse, no one wants to go do it. But everyone who's done it, they all say it's the most amazing thing. You gotta try it. I've never done it, but I'm just saying. There's people who say, oh man. So just hang with me for a minute as I get into this, because I truly wish I could give each of you this gift. The gift that happened to us so many years ago, where we gained a whole new perspective on what's important and what's valuable in our life. And that leap of faith we took, we're so happy we did, because we would never go back. We learned to trust our creator of the universe for all of our needs. We learned what that really looked like in a practical way. Now, I said earlier, the Apostle Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, he traveled as a missionary all the time. So he traveled light. He would only take what could fit in a backpack or less. And he would travel around, and he was spreading the good news of Jesus Christ. Of course, he got put in prison as time went on, but before he got put in prison, he was traveling around. There's one instance I want to look at where he was going to the church in Ephesus to encourage them, to speak to them at the church. And through prayer time, he just, through praying with God, he felt an impression from God. Like he knew, like, this is going to be my last time here. And so he told them, he said, this is going to be the last time I'm going to be here in Ephesus, because I feel like I'm supposed to go to Jerusalem, and I'm supposed to go to places where I know that if I go there, they're going to arrest me. I just know they are, because the warrants are out for my arrest. They want to arrest me because I'm proclaiming Jesus Christ. But I feel like I'm supposed to go there, and I feel like God's got a purpose and a plan in all this. And so this is my last time I'm going to see you guys. And so as he's talking to them, it's in chapter 20 that he has these closing words for the church in Ephesus. Here's what he says. Now I commit you to God and to the word of his grace, which can build you up and give you an inheritance among all those who are sanctified. And so this is a nice way to start off by just saying, hey, God is going to take care of you. God is going to build you up. God's got something good for you waiting after all this is done. So this is how he starts off. He continues. I have not coveted anyone's silver or gold or clothing. You yourselves know that these hands of mine have supplied my own needs and the needs of my companions. Now, why did he say that? Well, he's saying that because he did work. Paul was known as a tent maker. Paul was known as a person who, he did preaching, but he also did some work on the side. I can relate with this because I also do the teaching here at the church, but then I also do work on the side too that helps our family to kind of earn the money and fill it in. So I understand what he's saying here. That these hands of mine have supplied my own needs. Like, in other words, what he's saying is, I'm not doing this for the money, is what he's saying. I'm not doing this because I want stuff. I want your stuff or whatever. What Paul is saying is, look, guys, I'm trying to acknowledge the fact that I've worked. These hands of mine know the value of hard work. So we're on the same, like he's trying to relate with them. We're on the same page here. We all know what it means to work and to work for what I get. And when I work for what I get, it's mine. He knows this. So he continues on. In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak. Now he kind of turns the page a little bit. Remembering the words the Lord Jesus himself said. But what he's saying here is, by my hard work, I wasn't just working for myself. We all work jobs because we have to. I'm sure a lot of us here would say, if I could find a way to have all the money I have now but not have to work, sign me up for that. I'm sure we'd all much rather not work and do fun stuff and do what we want to do instead, but we have to. It's part of our system, right? We all have to work hard for what we want. But in that process of working hard for what I want, it becomes more and more difficult to want to give that away only because I worked hard for this. I deserve this. I worked my butt off for this overtime pay. So I'm going to do something that I want to do with this overtime pay. We can all relate with that thinking, and Paul's acknowledging that right here. But he points out as he closes, remembering the words the Lord Jesus himself said. Then he continues. It is more blessed to give than to receive. And I'm sure the church there was like, well, yeah, but but he stops here on purpose because he's trying to point out this word blessed is important. In a sentence, we pronounce it blessed. It's more blessed to give than to receive. But blessed means to be blessed. And to be blessed means that your needs are taken care of. If you think about it. If you're a blessed person, what does that mean? That means I'm all set. I'm blessed. I'm all set. My needs are taken care of. They're covered. And the Apostle Paul, who has sacrificed so much, he's worked so hard. He lives his life out of a backpack, traveling around, encouraging others, says to them that it's more blessed to give than to receive. He knows the value of hard work, but he's saying there's more in it for you if you give it away than if you keep it, is what he's actually saying. He's saying there's actually more in it for you, because blessed means, it means blissful happiness, that all my needs are met. Blessed means blissful happiness. And who doesn't want blissful happiness? We all want blissful happiness. I want blissful happiness. But he's saying it's found in having less for yourself, even though you work hard for it. And you can always give. There's always an opportunity to give. No matter how little you have, there's always an opportunity to give. No matter how much you make or how little you make, comparing to each other. And Paul didn't just say this, he lived it. And the way he showed us to do it is by surrendering. And in church, you sometimes see people raise their hands up. And to explain that, the reason that we lift our hands in church is out of surrender. It's out of surrender, acknowledging that, God, I don't have the answers. I'm acknowledging I don't have the answers, and I am surrendering. I give up my life to you. So whatever you want to do in me, do it, Lord. Whatever I'm holding on to, I shouldn't hold on to, I'm going to let it go. And I'm going to give it away for you, God. Whatever I'm supposed to do, but I don't want to do it, I'm going to do it. Whatever I shouldn't do, I won't do it. But we're surrendering and saying, your will be done, God, not my own. And it's showing your trust in God. It's allowing God to take your life and make it a service to others. And I want to ask us today, have you ever considered surrendering more of your life to Jesus Christ? Have you ever considered the idea of course, when you become a Christian, that is the point of surrender, of course, but have you ever considered doing that more, and that it's a journey and not just a statement or a decision? It's actually an ongoing journey of continuing to surrender our lives to Jesus Christ. So what does it mean to surrender? How do you do that? It's something like this. Before I make a big decision, it means I'm going to pray about it before I do it. And I don't mean the kind of prayer that says, okay, God, am I supposed to buy this new car if I'm not supposed to make the house shake? Cool, thanks, God. It's not saying that. You know, we can be silly with some of our stuff. We're like, you know, Lord, make me feel really cruddy about it if I'm not supposed to do it. Man, I still feel really good. I'm going to do this. No, it's when you pray, it's praying like this. Being honest and saying, God, I really want this. But I know that sometimes I've wanted things in my past that turned out to not be the greatest thing for me. And I don't want to make those kind of mistakes again, God. So I'm going to wait before I make this purchase. And Lord, or this time that I wait, I'm going to pray that you'll send people along my path. Or maybe it's something I see, a message, or maybe it's in church or somewhere, but that something will speak to my heart and will help me to know whether or not I should actually do this and follow through. And you know what, guys? That is the best advice I ever heard from somebody, is to wait. I've never regretted it. 9 times out of 10, when I wait to purchase something of significance, either a better deal came along by just waiting a little bit, or I found out that I didn't need it at all after a little bit. How many of us have ever said this? I wished I had known that before I just bought one. How many of us have said that? Oh, I wished I had known because a million times, right? I mean, very rarely have I ever said, I wish I hadn't waited. I'm always happy that I waited. And so good advice is to take time and wait before making something like a big purchase, because it's more blessed to give than receive, and we are trusting God with surrendering and saying, Lord, you will supply my needs if I surrender to you and show you my trust. So Lord, I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to give it a week. Help me with this decision, God. But I tell you what, I always feel great whenever I've walked out of I remember once I was helping my son Jordan get a car at a dealership. This is in Florida years ago. And this principle of wait has just been principle of mine. And I'm like, okay, we're going to, my son Jordan, who's like 18 or 19 at the time, they're like, we're ready to close the deal. I'm like, okay, no, we're all set. Thank you. And I'm like, okay, come on. He's like, look, we're leaving. I'm like, yeah, come on. And it was as we're walking out the door that they came up to us like, look, here's what we'll do. We'll bottom line. And they knocked a huge amount off of it. Or I stopped and I'm like, okay, Lord. All right. And we actually ended up doing it. It was a fantastic deal. But normally I'll walk away for much longer than that. But I've never felt horrible. I've always felt great by walking away from something and giving it time, because time allows God to do the work inside of us or even around us at times. You'll never regret it. In fact, this week something came up. And Al, you'll relate to this one. It was at Home Depot. I've got this. I mentioned I do some side work. I've got this side job coming up that requires me to travel a distance to it. So I needed a toolbox that had wheels to put tools in, so I could wheel it through rough terrain. And I didn't have anything that would do that. And I tried using a backpack. It was killing me because it was like 100 pounds almost. It was way too much weight in a backpack for a long distance. So I shopped a little bit at the Home Depot for this stuff, and I'm looking at the prices for it. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to give it some time because it's just a habit of mine now. I'm going to give it some time now before I make a decision. I'm not going to. All I did was look today. Now I'm going to walk away. Well, I walked away, and after a few days, I thought, you know what? Let me look online. So I looked online, and sure enough, online I find this better deal for the same thing, but I got more for the price. I'm like, it just meant that I'd have to order it. It would ship to me. It would take a few more days, but I'm like, thank you, Lord. So I made my purchase. And a few days went by. The shipment came, and I was excited. I opened the boxes, and it's like only part of the stuff. And I'm going, and the part that came didn't even have wheels. And I'm like, well, this isn't going to help me at all. This isn't what I wanted. And I thought, and a part of me thought you should have just bought it from the store, because I'm like, no, all right. So that day I packed the boxes back up, and I had all my paperwork, because it said, hey, we make it easy for you, bring it right back to the store to return it. So I took it to the store and explained to them what had happened. They're like, oh, sorry about that. Returned the stuff. And I ended up, I'll just go buy it off the shelf. So I went and bought it off the shelf because we're getting closer to the time I actually need it. I get back home, and then the next day, another box arrives through parcel, and there was the rest of it. And I'm like, what in the world? So this is crazy. So somehow the packages got, I don't know if it got lost, separated the shipping, whatever, but it ends up showing up. And so now I'm like, okay, so now what do I do? So I take that to Home Depot now and get a manager involved, because I'm like, so can we reverse the return? Which Al's gonna know about this. He's like, no, this stuff's already gone, man. We do it quick. It's already on its way back. He's like, so he's like, there's nothing we can do with it. It's just a done deal. And I'm like, okay. And so he goes, well, do we have those items in the store that you still need or whatever? Maybe we can do it. And I'm like, I don't think so. Well, maybe there is. We went and looked, and sure enough, the items were there. And we realized that he's like, well, here, just buy these items, and then you're set. You're good to go. Then you'll have what you need. It'll end up costing about the same amount. But it really wasn't, because once I bought those items, it was actually almost half the price. The way that it worked out. And the manager was like, you're good. I'm like, thank you. And so I even got a better deal. And it all came down to because I waited and didn't just get what I wanted in the beginning. Waiting always pays off. It's the best advice I ever got from anyone. So some of us, these big purchases, that could mean $50, like me, that's $50 and up is a big purchase. To others, it may be $500 and up would be a big purchase. But I recommend to make a big purchase to take time and pray about it. In fact, a good rule of thumb is 10% of whatever your weekly check is. If it's 10% or higher of whatever your weekly check is, you should probably take at least a week and pray about it and think about, should I or shouldn't I make this decision and get this? And it's interesting because a tenth or 10% it's been a benchmark for centuries within the church. Within God's financial plan, that's been a benchmark for many things. A tenth of our time, a tenth of our resources. It's an interesting mathematical thing where it symbolizes just the right portion, not too much, not too little. It's a very interesting thing, I think. And in part of surrendering what's mine, I do want to give away part of my income. That's a decision that I've made, then I'm going to give away part of my income and I'm going to subscribe to God's economy. Because God's economy isn't like the world's economy. God's economy is like this. You give, you save, and you spend. And it's like a priority in that order. I want to give first, which is backwards to our economy in the world. If you think about it, it's like, well, why would you give first? That doesn't make sense. But this is God's economy, so just hang with me for a minute. Give first, save something second, so this way the unforeseen circumstances that all of us have known about that cause train wrecks in our life financially sometimes, we're saving and putting away a little bit for that in case something unforeseen is going to happen later. I'm putting a little bit away, and then I spend with what's left over for what I want to spend on for things that I like. But often we get it backwards. And often it looks more like, I'm going to spend what I want because I really need this or want this right now, and then I'll try to save whatever's left over. And if anything's left over to that, then I can give it. But often this becomes closer to 100%, and this becomes closer to 10 to 0, and this becomes 0. Because when we do it this way, it's easy to find lots of things you want when it looks like you've got so much to use, but you haven't prioritized yet. You're not really thinking about it. You're just impulsively acting on it. But by prioritizing, it's on God's economy, and those unforeseen circumstances, they're handled. You have peace about it. You're like, no, it's good. Oh, honey, the car, it needs 2 new tires, and we hadn't planned for it. It's like, no, it's okay. We have our savings. We have that for this reason. We're okay. And so in God's economy, your life is full of peace. It's full of happiness, and you're not stressed as much. Stress still is easy to get anywhere, but you're not as much because you've done your financials in priorities. The other time that we surrender to God is with our time. Because besides God's economy, there's also God's schedule that we could talk about. And this is really interesting because the way God time works is like this. It'd be God, how I spend my time, God and others first. In other words, I'm going to prioritize my hours I have in a week to spend it with God and helping other people first, work second, and me time third. And it can look kind of like this in a percentage. It can have like 25% to God and others, 50% for work, and 25% for me. And that's not really a bad percentage. And for those of you who are looking at this right now and say, wait a minute, how can God, wait, stay back with me here. How can you look at God and others and say, that's on the same line? Shouldn't God be first? Like, shouldn't there be, some of you may be tripping on this right now. Maybe I'm wrong, but you may be thinking, how can you have this together? God should always be first alone, but this is together on purpose because Jesus said to us in Matthew 25, when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was in jail, you helped me. When I was thirsty, you gave me. Jesus pointed out and said to him that when you do for the least of these, you're doing it to me. Jesus pointed out that these are supposed to be together because as you do for others, you are doing for me, God. It doesn't mean that you just don't ever pray. No, it means you're going to spend time praying for God, but you're going to spend an equal amount of time helping others at the same time. It's combining those two together. That's why that's like that, just in case anybody was tripping. But for those of you who maybe looked at the math and wondering, where does he come up with that? I'm glad you asked. Here's how I come up with it. I sat down and calculated how many hours I spent in a week. I do this stuff. So here's the next, go ahead to the next one, calculation. I figured out that there's 168 hours per week. We all have the same amount. It's 24 times 7, okay? It's nobody gets more. It's the same hours. We're all allotted the same. That's a very fair thing. 168 per week. Now, if you sleep 8 hours a night, which is what's recommended, and if you take showers, which is what's recommended, and if you eat 3 meals a day, which is recommended, I added all that into this time, so that's 88 hours a week for eating, sleeping, taking care of my body, and all that good stuff. Then, if you work 40 hours, deduct 40 hours, and I know there's some of you probably thinking, well, I work 50. Okay, listen, you can't count driving time to work, because guess what driving time really is? It's me time. You can do whatever you want to while you drive. You can listen to your favorite tapes, or you can do God time, listen to messages. So don't mix that in there. But if 40 hours work, or if you work more, then okay, you adjust your number to fit that, but I'm just putting 40 as the average. And then what that leaves is it leaves 40 hours to work with. 40 hours in your week that you can do whatever you want to. And so I'm like, okay, 20 hours for God and others, and 20 hours for me. Now think about it. You might be thinking, well, is there enough me time? 20 hours a week. That's a lot. That's what, 7 times 3 is 21? That's almost 3 hours a day just for me. But if I don't do this, what we're currently doing is 6 hours a day just for me. That's bad. That's too much time for you. It's important to have me time. It's important to have times. Jesus even did it where he said, I'm going to go away and I'm going to refresh and refuel I need some me time. Important to have me time, but you don't want to have too much. You don't have too little. Balance is always good. So this is just laying out. If you think about it in this terms, you think, I got a lot of time each week to do things that could be done. Some of you are liking this, some of you are like, I don't know if I like this. But just hang with me and stick with me for just a little bit longer, because the way this works for a lot of us, since we all have about 80 hours to work with after our sleep and stuff, 40 hours for working and 40 for other things, not all of us have as good of a time of prioritizing our sleep and our taking care of our body time and that. So that time can sometimes add a little bit more, which goes into me time, because if you choose to sleep more, that comes into me time, quite honestly. So don't raise your hands with what I'm about to do, but a lot of us, it looks like this. If you put this one up. For a lot of us, it looks like me time is 40 to 60 hours, work time is 40 to 60 hours, which leaves nothing for nothing else, for nobody else. And in this situation, you're going to be saying a lot of the time, like, I'm tired, I work too much, I don't even ask me for nothing because I got nothing to give. But look at what's going on. You've got a lot of me time, and this is, I know, I hope I'm not stepping on toes, but this is a lot of me time that's going on because you're not giving it to God and to others. And so you got to think about this. Because the problem is that we turn the priority around and we want to prioritize ourselves, but we can't. If we put God first, everything falls in order. First down to third. Prioritizing is what it's about. And when we follow God's plan for our time, we feel fulfilled and at peace because we're getting enough sleep. And we feel fulfilled and at peace because we know what a difference we made to help those people when that card came in the mail and the person's showing the gratitude through a card and saying thank you. Or when that Facebook post comes up, they say, I just want to thank you for what you did to help me out the other day. You didn't have to do that. And you're like, that feels really good. I mean, I didn't do it because I wanted to feel good. I didn't want to help. But man, it builds me up. It fuels me by helping other people. Somehow I get recharged. It's almost like getting me time, but I didn't spend me time. And it's God's economy with our time as well as with our money. If we give to God first, he builds it within us at the same time. It's amazing. It's miraculous, but it's God's plan. So I wish all of you, I sincerely mean this from the bottom of my heart, I wish all of you could experience total loss. And I know it sounds horrible, but I wish that because of what it does for you afterwards, how it helps you. Because we take for granted oftentimes that point in our life where we did that gives us a whole new perspective on everything that we do with our life. Because you cannot know what's truly valuable until you're forced to carry it within one backpack and just looking around you at who's standing with you. That's what forces you into finding out what's truly valuable and what's most important for your life. And decluttering causes clarity because our vision gets so blurred by our busy schedules and by our busy lifestyles and by keeping our hands busy just doing things to take our mind off things that causes blurriness in our vision and we can't see clearly. So the easiest way to gain permanent perspective change is, of course, to have total loss. But before anybody goes home and lights a match and burns your house down today, let me stop you and say there's another way. There's another way to do this, so don't worry. Because remember what Paul said, it's more blessed to give, put that up there if we were, thank you. It's more blessed to give than to receive. And so I've got handouts for you today that my lovely assistant's going to hand out. Raven, thank you, Raven. Golf clap. As she's handing that out, if you're watching online, you can participate in this. Go grab a blank piece of paper and a pen and hit pause and then come back. And now that you're back, take that paper and you're going to write on 4 columns. On one side of the paper, put 4 columns with the words my time on the top. And those 4 columns are God and others, work, me, and other. And then on the back side of that paper, you're just going to have 2 columns and you're going to write needs at the top. And it's going to be needs and wants. So all of you have the handouts now. Could I get one too? I'm sorry, I should have held one back for myself, but I did not. So all of you have these handouts now, and on one side you'll find my time. Let's all look at the time first. And on one far left it says God and others, and this is going off of that hourly thing that you saw earlier, but God and others 20, work 40 to 50, me 20, other 88. Okay, so that kind of gives you a little perspective of hours that you're looking at within a week, and that's other means that's just everything's left over for sleep and all of it. But the challenge for you to do is to sit down today and write in each of these columns, what do you spend your time on in an average week? Like, think to yourself, what do I do in a typical week? Like, how on the right, write the word sleep with here's how much I sleep. And for me time, let's see, what else do I do for me? Well, I love to go and I start off every day by having some prayer time, so I'll write that in that many hours. Or maybe for work, you'll write down, well, I go to work Monday through Friday, this many hours. And then for God and for others, this is for a week. And for God and others, here's stuff I do, for God and others, church would count as part of that time. So you write down, well, I go to this church for this much time, or I help out at the orphanage for this much time in a given week or whatever. But list all this stuff down, and then it's going to give you an amazing perspective after you finish of how your time is spent every week. It's refreshing, trust me. And on the back side, the other side, it says my money. And on the money side, this is what helps you when you're trying to make these decisions. And ask yourself, what are the things I want to spend my money on this week that are my needs versus my wants? And need is a way of saying, well, I couldn't, like in other words, I can't get through the week if I don't have this. And if that coffee's on that, then coffee's on that. But but you'll list out these things that this is absolutely what I need. And then wants are things where you're like, well, I like to have this, so I'll put that over there. Maybe instead of just a coffee, I like to get a special macchiato. Well, then I'll put that on the want side because I don't have to have that, but I like it, So, so you'll separate it out that way. But by doing this can also help you gain a perspective on your needs and your wants without having to burn houses down or sell everything you own and move to another country. It helps you with that because it's so important, guys, to have the perspective of what do I need in my time as well as my money. Because all of us knows what it feels like to not have enough time and not have enough money. We all know what that feels like. But if we sit down and prioritize, it can show us that maybe we have more than we think. It just helps us see where it's going. So this is a great little exercise. No matter how little or how much you have, it helps you to budget and to prepare for it much better. Now, if you decide to make changes based on what you've done here, then now you're getting the next level. Because now you're experiencing what it's like to experience that surrender part that I talked about. Because you're not surrendering by just listing this out. You're just opening your eyes. You're opening your eyes and becoming clearer vision on what's actually going on. But after I wrote it all down, and now I'm going to surrender by making a decision. Maybe I want to change some of this. And by prioritizing and changing it, that's when that surrender action starts to happen. And I would be so thrilled for you if you could experience doing that. But if you decide to do nothing after today, if you decide you're just going to, this ends up tucked under the floor in the car or ends up on the trash can at home, you're going to wake up a couple weeks from now, and the good news is nothing's changed, but the bad news is nothing's changed. Or maybe a year from now, you'll look back a year later and think, oh, Pastor Matt, I'm so frustrated because I feel like I don't have any time, and I'm frustrated because I feel like I don't have the money. And I might smile and go, did you do the exercise? And you're like, oh yeah, a year ago? Oh man, I didn't do that, and So let's avoid you feeling bad and me trying to say I told you so. And trust me, trust Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul, he's got way more clout than I got on this, because when you put God first in your time and in your money, it's amazing how it all works out and how you have more than you thought you had. I know it sounds crazy and it may not always add up in your mind, but watch and see what God can do. Because I do think all of you are going to do it. I really do. And I think that you're going to find some great things from it, because we're smart people in our church here. And I know you guys. I know you guys. So I think it's going to be good. I think you're going to love it. So let's pray. Let me pray over you before we close up service. Heavenly Father, I pray now, God, that you would bring to their minds clarity as they're writing this out, that they'll remember all the different things, that they'll make time to do this, Father, and that you'll help them by reminding them to take time to do this. And as they do, as they talk about and think about how to put you in a bigger place in their life, as they surrender to you, God, I'm just so excited because I know you're just waiting to let them experience what it's like to be blessed, that it's more blessed to give than to receive, that there's more in it for us, that you're just wanting to unleash amazing things as we enter into your economy for our time and our money. So Father, I thank you that you're going to do that in our lives as we surrender to you today. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So now before we leave, I'd like to invite you to stand up with me because we're going to sing a couple of last songs with our friends at Woodstock City Church. And I invite you during these last songs to think about this idea of surrendering just a little bit more and inviting God to be a part of your life even more. Thank you.
You stood before creation, eternity in your hands, and you spoke the earth into motion, my soul now to stand. And you stood before my failures and carried the cross for my shame. My sin weighed upon your shoulders, my soul now to stand. So what could I say? And what could I do but offer this heart, oh God, completely to you? So I walk upon salvation, your spirit alive in me, this life to declare your promise, my soul now to stand. So what could I say? And what could I do but offer this heart, oh God, completely to you? So what could I say? And what could I do but offer this heart, oh God, completely to you? We can trust, oh, we can trust. So much freedom today. Freedom in knowing who God is and who we are in turn. So we can stand today, come on, with confidence. In Him, we say this. So I'll stand with arms high and heart upended in awe of the one who gave it all. So I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered all. I am His, yours. I'll stand, yes, I'll stand. So I'll stand with arms high and heart upended in awe of the one who gave it all. So I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered all. I am what could I do? There's no other response. But offer this heart, oh God, completely to you. I love you, Lord, for your mercy never failed me. In all my days, I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Let's practice that open hand posture. Remember his faithfulness. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God.
All my life you have been faithful. So good. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will remember. I will remember. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Let's all sing that, your goodness. Your goodness is running